Welcome everybody back to Warm Weather Fans. It is Brian and Zeke, and we are here to run down all of the Week 13 action as the Sun Belt regular season wraps up and we get ready for conference championship time, bowl season, and maybe even some playoff action. We'll see how the college football playoff rankings shake out on Tuesday. We're recording this on Sunday night, the 23rd. Zeke, how's it going over there with you, man?
I'm worked up, man. I'm jumping the gun. I'm worked up about this Old Dominion thing again, man.
What do you mean worked up?
The Old Dominion faithful came back out and retweeted our clips from the preseason show about us saying they don't have much offensively. Retweeted the image of me AI'd as a clown, which I'll just put the hat on for you. You don't have to burn down a Jamaican city to do that. You could just ask. I'll put the wig on. I'll tell you, man, you asked how I'm doing. That really got me. It really got me.
I truly my team is so bad and like beyond saving that I'm totally numb. Like I do not care. There's off the field stuff too that I'll talk about when we get to that game, but I'm beyond like giving a shit at this point. I'm just like, sure, man, whatever. You want to say we don't know anything about football? Fine, whatever. Like, I don't care. All right, so let's start off with the Thursday night game. So, Louisiana defeats Arkansas State in Jonesboro, 34-30. Lunch Winfield had a good game on the ground. 20 carries, 89 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, it felt like Arkansas State was just disjointed offensively. Like they had trouble like sustaining drives. Obviously, this game comes down to the last play where Louisiana stuffs Jalen Rayner at the goal line on an attempted carry. And they steal one. And then you've got the immortal video of Butch Jones now coming off the field yelling GD it a bunch. And I don't know. It's to me, it's like you have been on the anti-Butch Jones train. I've been a little bit more ambivalent this season compared to last one. And this can go for like Southern, any of those teams that overachieved that everybody pointed in the preseason and went, that team overachieved. It's not going to happen again. ULM, Georgia Southern, Arkansas State. It's like water always finds its level almost, where it's like we knew who this team was all along, and they have played almost directly to expectations.
Sure. 2 points on this, really from the Arkansas State side that I want to bring up. First of all, this was a coaching failure from Butch Jones. You get a pass from Rayner to Devin Spencer that moves Arkansas State to about the 13-yard line. It was 34-30 at this point with 18 seconds left. Butch Jones elects not to use the timeout there. Later defends it, saying we wanted to keep them on their heels. We liked our play call. Ultimately, you don't go but 9 seconds between your next snap. So half of the remaining time is wasted as you wait for Jalen Rayner to then throw an incompletion. You're then bailed out by a defensive pass interference at the 2-yard line, another incompletion, and then you run what was like a speed option type thing where Rayner was just kind of gobbled up at the line of scrimmage. You have at least, especially when we look at the fact you go incomplete, defensive pass interference, incomplete, speed option. You ran 4 plays in 9 seconds. Those are 4 additional plays you could have had if you had just called the darn timeout.
Yeah.
And this is Butch Jones' inefficacy that I'm sure Tennessee fans have just been waiting for. It's like this is the moment where when Butch Jones, should he get his papers in the offseason, this is finally the moment where we can say, okay, this was the one. There were a lot of small blunders. There were a lot of issues roster construction-wise. He stumbled into Jalen Rayner, and that prolonged his career at Arkansas State and possibly as a head coach. But this was the mistake that at the end of the year we're going to look back on. However, I want to give a hat tip to Arkansas State because after they made 9 sacks against Troy, we called that effort very much a fugazi. We called that fake, right? And we said, in retrospect, when we look at the defense numbers next offseason and we see Arkansas State flirting with the top of the order, we're going to forget that they had 9 sacks against a very poor Troy offense in that game, a poor Troy offensive line, and look over it. That might not be true, because over the last 4 games, Arkansas State with 21 sacks, which would rank 10th best in the conference on its own. Granted, those are against some of the worst offensive lines from a sacks perspective. You're looking at Georgia Southern, Troy, Southern Miss, and Louisiana. That's 3 of the bottom 6, 2 of the bottom 3 by sacks allowed in the conference. But these guys, Ethan Hassler and DeMarcus Hendricks, are the guys that have just like 2 edge rushers. Hassler more of like a stand-up 3-4 type of edge rusher. DeMarcus Hendricks, I think, plays in more of a traditional 4-down lineman edge role. They've just been blowing it up for them this year, and obviously too little too late at this point. The season, they're well out of the conference race. And again, they're way too late to save Butch Jones' job, but that's been a real surprise over the last couple weeks that I think has gone really, really quiet. And from a national perspective, I think has been needs some attention, because those guys have been blowing it up.
I think I don't mean to diminish like what they have been doing as far as rushing the passer, but I think it is a little different when it's like a Lunch Winfield, Samari Collier type, where it's like he scrambles so much that it's like the line between what is a scramble and what is an actual pass attempt kind of gets blurred a little bit, I feel like, in translation. And
that's
so
legitimate.
it's like the numbers look good on the surface, but sometimes you get it gets a little finicky as to how they like score those things. You know what I mean? So it's like, what would be if you had a more traditional stand-up passer like a JJ Cole or some Aiden Armenta or something like that? A sack on them is truly a sack because they're not really rushing all that much. But when you've got Winfield taking 20 carries, I'm a little bit less enthused by the sack totals, because I'm like, okay, so I think sack yardage might be a better way to quantify like the impact of that, because it's like if you get a bunch of like 1 and 2 yard and 3 yard sacks, like it doesn't really set the offense back that much. So I'm kind of just like, how different is that from a loss of 1 with a run by a running back at that point?
Sure.
Like it's
no,
a
that's
stat,
legitimate.
It's like it's a stat, but in reality, like, did you set the offense back that much? Like, no, not really. So I don't want to diminish what they've accomplished, because they've the rest of the defense is bad, and there's not really any other way to say it. They found some edge rush help, and that has assisted them. I mean, they're below 500, so it hasn't assisted them that much, but it has been nice to see some signs of life, like a pulse from the defense. And to me, I'm just like, if you can't stop a Louisiana team with a bad offensive line, bad receivers, running backs that can't find lanes because of said bad offensive line, and you're allowing 34 points in a Thursday night like island game, I don't really care what the sack numbers look like, because at that point it's like, how much of an impact did you really make when the other team still scored almost 35 points? That's just kind of, I'm like, after the 5th touchdown, I'm kind of like, it doesn't really matter to me all that much. Like, so I mean, Corey Rucker stepped up in this one, 8 catches, 120.
Welcome back.
Rayner threw for 256. Fun with PFF grades. Lunch Winfield finished with the stone worst passing grade in the Sun Belt this week, but the 4th highest rushing grade. So I thought that was like an interesting dynamic of like, not great. 18 of 26, 147. His average depth of target was like 7.8 yards. His yards per attempt was like 5.7. So it wasn't great, but You know,
That
you do.
I'm not disappointed by that kind of performance. To give that the worst grade, I mean I know the PFF grades are a little finicky with how they grade them. I thought he was pretty good. If you get that kind of game out of Lunch Winfield most weeks, 18 for 25 for 147's on the lower side, but let's say 150, and then he goes 20 carries for 90. You can't be. You just got that. That's a great performance. I would say, especially for where Louisiana is at from an offensive perspective. But
Yeah.
that's more of an indictment, I guess, of just the PFF grades than anything.
Yeah, I know how controversial PFF grades can
Mhm.
be. You know, we don't need to get into all that, but you know, it's just one of those things. It's like, yes, I think it more accurately represents it when it's like, okay, as far as offensive just grade goes, factoring in rushing,
Mhm.
passing, and everything, he was closer to like the middle of the conference. But you know, when you isolate them like that, it's like,
Sure.
yeah, he's not going to be as good as Goose Crowder, who threw for 350 and 4 touchdowns. He's not going to be as good as Braylon Braxton, threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's like, yeah, a guy that, you know, 5.7 yards per attempt is not going to impress anybody at PFF. Like I know, they love people that push the ball down the field and are like
Mhm.
looking to make some of those deep throws. So I'm not shocked, but yeah, again, this is a Butch Jones like water finds its level type deal where it's like he was always going to kind of go back to being a 500 sub 500 coach, and you know they get App State to finish the season out, and it's like, are they going to win that game? Maybe
Mhm.
not. So I don't know. Like they could finish and miss a bowl game at this rate.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a handful of teams that are sitting in that 5 and 6 range that really need to win this last, obviously, to get the bowl eligibility. And I don't know, for some of these teams, it looks really grim. For some of them, it looks really, really grim. Missing a bowl game by one game isn't the death penalty by any means. You're not Georgia Southern, Georgia State, ULM, but I don't know, for a Louisiana team that was in the conference championship last year, it's like, what are we doing?
I mean, we've talked about their quarterback situation. It's just tough, like
Mhm.
all the way around. I mean, technically, Lunch is their third stringer. You know, they now that doesn't excuse the offensive line. The offensive line's been really bad. They haven't been able to run the football because of that. Their receivers are nothing to really write home about. So I think if they found a way to make it to the bowl game, I mean, they're going to beat ULM on Saturday. So it's like they're going to finish 6-6. They're going to make a bowl game. It's not ideal considering that's everybody had you penciled in as like right there with, I think it was Texas State was the team that everybody was like, yeah, it's gonna be Louisiana and Texas State in the West. And I was kind of like, I don't see the case for Texas State, but if you said Louisiana was gonna be right up there, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And this thing has gone off a cliff since like the Rice game to like open the season. So, you know, this is an attempt to kind of salvage that. So it's just like,
Mhm.
yeah, whatever. Um, but yeah, okay. So let's get to the Saturday slate. I'm just going to run down these games in the order that they're presented on ESPN. James Madison stays alive in the college football playoff hunt with a win over Washington State 24-20. This really came down to that Wayne Knight run that iced it at the end. I think it was like
Mhm.
58, 59 yards or something like that. Um, yeah, Alonza Barnett went back to his Georgia State mode, which is, you know, I know Jack Fitzpatrick came on with us from JMU Sports News and was like, it's really about getting him into a rhythm. He was not in a
Mhm.
rhythm. The first half, I think he threw for 29 yards and had like a 30% completion percentage in the first half. It was bad. I mean, it was looking dire. You know, it was
Mhm.
only 17-10. And I'm like, you know, JMU's defense is going to keep them in this one, but is running the ball going to be enough when your quarterback is as bad as Barnett was in the first half? And it ended up working itself out. But I was just like, man, you cannot spend the last couple weeks of your season doing this. Like I
Mm-mm.
don't understand I don't understand what goes on with him.
It's weird because we keep coming back to that Georgia State game, which was very, very poor from him, and again, had they been playing any of the or 133 other teams in the FBS, would have probably been a loss. But every week it's like we get good performances out of Barnett. And I'm like, are we being too hard on him or being too hard on him? But then right as I'm ready to forgive him and say, yeah, we've been a little too harsh on him for one game, this is what we get in return. We're looking at even before the Wayne Knight run, which again was a real, I don't know if James Madison wins this game without that 58-yard touchdown from Wayne Knight.
Certainly not.
In the lead up to that, Barnett makes like a big time play to Braden Wisłowski, a kid who, mind you, with one catch for like 78 yards, that is his second highest single game yardage number through 3 years. So, we're not throwing to Randy Moss here. Underthrew him. I thought initially that it was just going to hit the dirt. That long pass that gives them, again, keeps them kind of in the game with Wazoo. I feel confident enough, having seen the track record of Barnett, that these come so infrequently that it's almost like you get this out of the system now. However, performances like this late in the season, like this, if James Madison puts their neck or foot on the neck of Washington State, James Madison is probably definitively the G5, G6 representative. It's still in the air. Again, you'll hear this, Tuesday? So you may already know where the committee sits on James Madison by the time you hear this. We don't know yet. This is a poor performance from James Madison. And so on the one hand, I think offensively, yes, this is all to say offensively. The defense, incredible as always. Washington State, when you go back and look at it, has a weird ability to just score 20 points. It doesn't matter if they're playing Idaho or Ole Miss. They're going to get their 20, 21 points in. But yeah, it starts and ends with Alonza Barnett with like a lot of the teams in this conference.
Yeah. My fear, and I don't want to say obviously that James Madison deserves the G5 slot. Like, I don't know if this means anything, but the AP poll that just got released today has James Madison ahead of Tulane in it. Tulane is like 24 and James Madison's like 19 or 20. So sure. I don't know if that affects the way that the College Football Playoff Committee thinks about it, but it's at least a piece of material that's out there that's like, they're ahead of Tulane. So, what do we do with this information? My fear is that they make it and they play a really good Power 5 school in the first round, Power 4, whatever, and he turns in one of these performances and they get beat like 31-3 in the first round, and there's a stigma around good Sunbelt teams moving forward because he might there's a chance he turns in one of these performances. That's a fear of mine because I thought that up until this game that we had put the Georgia State week behind us, and I was like, he gets one of these every season, but they know what they have to play for. They're going to keep rolling, all this stuff. And then he just comes out and kind of lays an egg for most of the game. And now I'm like, yes, they will beat. Who do they play in the finale? Who do they play in the last game of the season?
James Madison?
Yeah.
Oh, they have... I'm sorry, I had it pulled up a second ago.
No, it's fine. I don't remember. They'll beat whoever they play in the last week of the season.
Coastal. They've got Coastal. Yeah.
They'll beat Tad Hudson's brains in the last game of the season. My fear is not even with the Sun Belt title game. It's again, they get in over a Tulane or something like that, and then they go and lose to Texas A&M 31-3, and everybody's sitting around once again. They're already doing it. They're like seeding the groundwork of like, we don't need a G5 rep in the playoff. And I'm kind of like, but everybody loves that Boise State, Oklahoma Fiesta Bowl so much, but you want to make sure that we keep those from happening again? ? Like, right. You can't have it both ways. You can't say we love an underdog story and then be like, but what you really want to do is kick an underdog in the face the second they have a chance to kind of climb the ladder. And it's like, Well, then which one is it? Do you like an underdog story, or do you not want an underdog anywhere near the playoff, and you just want to see like an SEC Big Ten tournament, which is fine
Yeah.
because that's what a lot of people in the big major media outlets have basically been saying.
That's a bigger problem than I think we have time. That
No,
I
I know.
think you and I see eye to eye on. It's frankly ridiculous, and it's ridiculous that we're letting them get away with that. It's going to be who James Madison draws. If they make the playoffs, whoever makes the playoffs is indubitably going to be the number 12 seed. Right now, that would be Texas Tech, a Texas Tech team that has been bashing in the brains of UCF last week, BYU a couple weeks ago.
The BYU win is good, but I've watched them play, and it's like their competition's not great. I mean, other than BYU, really. There's not a lot of Big 12 schools that really like wow me this year. Texas Tech is good, but it's like Arizona State's down. Their quarterback has already announced basically he's out of there at the end of the season. And they were the representative out of the Big 12. It's like, who else is even still around? Like, do I care about Cincinnati? No. Like, I'm just like, who am I supposed to care about other than Texas Tech? So it's like, yeah, you beat BYU, and that was a good win. And I actually watched a lot of that game when it happened. But I'm like, what does BYU look like against a Power 5 school? Why are we just kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt and being like, no, they're right there with the Alabamas or whoever else, the Texas A&Ms, the Ohio States of the world? I'm like, are they? Or are we just saying that like they
James Madison is closer to BYU than BYU is to Indiana, Georgia, those teams.
It's almost like the Brian. I'm going to move off of this, but it's almost like the Brian Scalabrine quote when he's playing the guy on 101, and he's like, "I'm closer to LeBron than you are to me." And so it's like that's kind of where Texas Tech and BYU and all those are. It's like you're closer to James Madison than you are to like Oregon and like Ohio State and Indiana and all these other schools. All right, Georgia. All right, next game here. This one can be quick. I have a little bit to say about it just because there's off the field stuff that's going on now that I find very more interesting than the on the field product at this point. So Old Dominion, which for the record, any Old Dominion fans listening to this, we all, Zeke and I, picked Old Dominion to win big over Georgia Southern. So don't go get it twisted and edit this and be like, no, they definitely picked Georgia Southern to win and they're fools. It's like, no. Once we saw the lay of the land, we gave Old Dominion their just due, and even you capitulated on an episode when they were in the running for the playoff, and then they lost 2 straight conference games, and now they're on the outside looking in. So again, they don't understand like the middle ground. It seems like there is middle ground for it to be like, we aren't as good as we thought we were, but we're better than these guys thought. And it's like, that's where you guys sit right now. So Old Dominion wins 45-10. Again, this game was never close. JC French threw a pick on the second play from scrimmage, and that pretty much set the tone for the rest of the game. Old Dominion went down off of that and scored. Georgia Southern went and I think punted the next possession. Old Dominion went down and scored again. Colton Joseph didn't have to throw the ball that much. He actually took 20 carries for 189 and a touchdown in this one. We said leading up to this game, if anybody wants proof, go listen back to it. Georgia Southern can't defend scrambling quarterbacks. And this game cemented for me that they would have lost the Coastal game had Samari Collier not gotten hurt. Because Tad Hudson totally changed the outlook of that game. The interesting part to me that came off the field, and Zeke, I'll let you go right after this, is apparently a fan who is on Twitter that I follow for Georgia Southern is connected in the like inner circle of the athletic department. He heard from someone who is also connected that our AD went to this fan in the stands and told him, we can't even afford to fire a coordinator at the end of this season. And this person, this guy, Jason Cassels, I don't know how his name is pronounced exactly. He's a pretty prominent Georgia Southern like fan booster and like keeps pretty good stats. he has tracked our like athletic department budget, and basically the AD's full of crap because we can afford the buyout of Hilton. Honestly, like if it's spread the way that it says in his contract, we're basically paying him like $750,000 for the next like 5 years or something, and the AD is saying we can't even fire the defensive coordinator, which again, the guy on Twitter is like, this is total BS. So as an entire program, it's really bad right now. I tweeted out the other day, I was like, if this is true and we don't even make a coordinator change at the end of the season, like I'm all the way out. Like I will not spend the next 4 years plus sitting and waiting for Clay Helton to put it together, because I know at this point he's just not going to do it. And this game again helped cement that to me. So,
but his father, who is an exceptional man, on par with how holy Clay himself is, was on the sideline coaching guys up. That doesn't move the needle for you?
Not. Oh, I got another one. No, it doesn't move the needle, because this is another indictment of Clay Helton's ability to judge and manage talent. So late in the game, he pulls JC French because it's a blowout. Again, why would you pull him? Because the game's over, the season's over. You're probably not making a bowl game at this point. Instead of putting Weston Bryan in, the freshman who has been running Wildcat sets all season, he puts his son in the game, who would not have been playing college football if he didn't transfer from the school that his uncle coached at Western Kentucky. And he washed out of Western Kentucky and ended up at Southern. And he's been the backup and played very, very sparingly, mostly in blowout like type losses, because we haven't won many games that have been blowouts. But again, this is a total, like, people love to talk about Nepo babies. This is a Nepo program. It's Helton from Helton Sr., the grandfather, on down to Helton the third, the quarterback. They all have injected their fangs into this program, and they've almost sucked the life out of it completely, because people were even complaining that there were no fans in the stands on Saturday. And you can blame like fall break and Thanksgiving coming up and all that. You can't tell me it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that like this team's probably not making a bowl game at the end of the season. So I don't know.
Yeah, a point to your about the money. There's a guy I follow on Twitter, and I read his newsletter from time to time. I need to subscribe. I need to pay for it. I really should. His name's Matt Brown. He runs Extra Points, and it's about like college fun. And his thing that he leads off with, every couple months he'll say, "It's time to get in the FOIA mobile." And I mean, that's the state we're at with Georgia Southern. It's time to start looking at those numbers and really figuring out, like, are you in the situation where, because now we have two conflicting, right? We have the AD saying you can't afford it. Numbers may say otherwise. Was the thing from Davis, that wasn't like a public statement. That was like a one-on-one conversation deal.
So it is a thing, a talk that he had with a booster who, as far as I understand it, this has been like piecemeal information that I've gotten. Like I'm basically getting drip fed information on this. What it seemed like was a booster walk up to him and said, "Are we looking at making a staff change at the end of the season?" Meaning Helton. And Davis went to him and said, "We can't even afford to fire a coordinator." And again, our fans have FOIA'd the school because they won't release any of this information. I think our coordinators make around like $200,000 ish a year. So saying you can't, and Bailey, I think, is on a 2-year deal. So saying you can't fire a guy who's making $200,000 is total bullcrap, because if that's the case, you shouldn't be a D1 program. You should be at the, not even FCS level. You should be at the D2 level. If you're like $200,000 and you're like turning your pockets out and they're empty, like that is not going to fly. But we're going to keep tolerating this because everybody from the president to the AD to the head coach are all clowns. They've been clowns. I've called them clowns on previous episodes. They won 2 games, and I guess they thought their crap didn't stink because they beat App and a hurt Coastal Carolina team. And now it's like back to reality, bozos. Like, I mean, I don't know what you guys expected to happen. But anyway, all right. On the other side of things, Old Dominion played extremely well. I've already said that. Traquan Jones, 14 carries, 73 yards. He was efficient. Like you said, Hargrove ran for 3 touchdowns on 10 carries. Colton Joseph had those, 20 carries, 189 and a score. They basically, what I said, them and Marshall next week are going to look at the stats and go, why would we ever throw the ball? And Georgia Southern's offense is so mercurial that it's kind of like, yeah, why would you? Because there's a 50-50 chance they're not going to score 20 points. So why even put the ball in the air? Why even take the chance when you could just run it for 7 yards a carry or whatever they're allowing?
Yeah, it's bad. My program's in an equal state of disarray from record and just kind of state of the program, but at the very least, I know we can fire a coach. At least I know there's willingness to fire a coach. And
your AD is not in love, like maybe romantically, with Del McGee. They're not secretly giving him extensions at the end of every season, regardless of his record. It's like, I really don't envy. I would rather be Georgia State right now with this situation, because at least we fire McGee. It's a clean break. We can go hire, whoever's within our budget, but we're not hamstrung and tied to this guy. Whereas apparently the other thing the AD for Southern has said is not donating makes the problem worse. And I'm like, brother, if that's the answer, we need to start looking at who signed the guy to those extensions, because your name's on the most recent extension from the end of last year. So don't turn around and play victim and be like, we got to have the money and the fans got to show. No, you screwed up. This is the last time you're probably ever going to be an AD at any school ever. So enjoy it while it lasts, because either you are going to empty that stadium out and there's no one going to be there by the end of your tenure, or the professor grows a pair of testicles and fires you finally. Or the president, not the professor. The president's going to finally grow a pair of testicles and can you, as he should have never hired you in the first place. But that's kind of where we're at. And it's like, what's more dangerous at this point? Is fan revolt more dangerous than apathy? Because I truly want to know, because you're getting apathy. I think people have moved past the anger stage and are kind of at the acceptance stage of like the 5 stages of grief. They're just like, okay, I'll vote with my wallet. I'll go watch other stuff on Saturday. And then the team's like, no, don't do that. And it's like, we'll put a winning product on the field. And they're like, we're not going to do that. So, I mean, I'm like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a predicament that I do not envy. I hate that. Well, you just need to donate to make our team better. That's come from so many different people. College basketball's got a real bad case of that. This idea that more donation, and again, not donation from top level donors, but donation from you and I, the comm school graduates, is really gonna turn those programs around. I just hate that. Really ticks me off when I hear
the thing that ticks me off is I don't even care about the asking for the donations. If we were ULM and we were hamstrung money wise, and they were coming out being like, we'd love to put a winning quarterback out there, but we simply can't afford it, I would be like, I understand, because I think we have an okay head coach and I understand the budgetary limitations. What I have a problem with is when you, as the AD, sign a giant extension to a guy who's not a good coach, but you were fooled, I guess, by how good of friends you were with the guy, and now you're playing poor. That's what I have a problem with, is being like, yeah, I screwed up, but I'm not going to take responsibility. I'm going to put it back on the fans. That's what I have a problem with. And so that is why I'm like, I might just be done, because I might be done until like 2030 or whenever Helton's contract is up, because apparently we can't fire him, even though we fired Lunsford and paid him roughly the same amounts. So
Mhm.
like I don't know. But this was a good win for Old Dominion. Again, everybody, we saw this coming. We picked Old Dominion plus the points. Like, I don't know how much clearer we can make this. Yes, the preseason over-under was off. You guys still are not anywhere near going to the Sun Belt title game or the college football playoffs. So just, again, when you get up on your high horse, let that sink in that you will be sitting watching the playoff on New Year's Eve or whatever, the same as the rest of us, other than maybe JMU fans. So, like, pipe it down a little bit. Pipe down. All right. Next game here. This one was shocking.
Yeah.
App State beats Marshall. Marshall, another fan base, really beating their chest preseason. A lot of people were saying, Marshall fans were like, we're not going to miss a beat from where we were last year. And I was kind of like, what? Like, I think there is certainly a little bit of a coaching downgrade
Mhm.
from Huff to Gibson. There is a massive quarterback downgrade from Braylon Braxton to Carlos Del Rio Wilson. And I know Southern Miss lost, and we'll get to that. But the Marshall fans who wanted to like drag us over the coals in the preseason by us saying 4 or 5 wins, you're going to win 6. I do not want to hear a victory lap being like, you guys were off by 1 whole game. It's like,
Mhm.
6, brother. You showed me. So, yeah, Carlos Del Rio Wilson threw for 146 in a pick in a loss to a team that just lost to JMU 58-10 last week.
Yep. Left some points on the board from Marshall. Obviously, they're hurt late in the game. Del Rio Wilson goes down with, I believe, an ankle injury, so they have to turn to Zion Turner, who's actually really good, 8 for 9 for 54, 3 rushes for 16. So they didn't lose a huge, it wasn't a major back step, but you can't help but wonder how that could have played out differently, play call wise. Zion Turner ended up fumbling on like Marshall's second to last drive of the game. A drive that they were moving the ball pretty well. They were still well in their own territory, but had the chance to, at that point, it was a 24-23 game in Marshall's favor. They were trying to kind of run it out and, maybe get into field goal range, but they fumbled the ball over. App gets the ball, doesn't have to go too far, puts their own field goal up on the board, and then Marshall runs it out and then fumbles it again. It wasn't Turner, but ends up fumbling again. So I want to be hesitant. To your point about Marshall again, there's the step back at quarterback. There's a step back at coaching. Their
Defense.
ceiling,
There's no Mike
defense.
Green on
Obviously, no Mike
defense.
Green is going to do a lot for a defense.
No, your running backs aren't as good as AJ Turner was.
Right.
I think there was a little bit of a step back from what you have now to Christian Fitzpatrick from last year. So it's like, yeah, this is essentially what we anticipated. Like, again, if you're going to hammer us and be like, you guys thought we would win 5 and we won 6, I'm going to be like,
well, here's something I want to pose to you. There are 6 teams in the conference right now that are 5 and 6. That are, either going to make or miss a bowl game. Mm-hmm. That is Georgia Southern, Marshall, App, Texas State, Louisiana, Arkansas State. Of that bunch of 6, in the long term, maybe not long term, but in the next 2 to 3 years, I think I like Marshall out of those 6 above the rest. We've talked about the. Yeah. So to your point, obviously this is a Marshall team that's really hamstrung and then loses this game to App. I think Marshall's been really, really moving in the right direction, especially from where they could have been, comparing them to what Troy could have been, or what Troy was last year post Summerall, or 2 years ago. However, was it last year?
Yeah, that was year 1 for Jared Parker.
So I've been very impressed from a high level view of Marshall this season.
they as a team this season, they've been a lot more competent than I originally had thought, because the part that gave me pause, and I know it's Georgia, it was week 1, but they couldn't seem to settle on who they wanted to play. Like, it was like Carlos Del Rio Wilson played for a little bit, and then someone else played who I don't remember. And then it was like Zion Turner played at the end of the game, probably against Georgia's 4th string defense at that point. And it was like, he played pretty well. And so early I was kind of like, I want to see more out of Zion Turner than I do Carlos Del Rio Wilson. And now it's like, it's literally done like a full 360. Like, we were at a 180 and me being like, okay, Carlos Del Rio Wilson was, you know, good for a lot of this season. And then he has a game like this against App, and it's like, he didn't play well against JMU really either. So it's kind of like, there are some big games he's just kind of come up missing. And the thing that I had a problem with was not necessarily like the forward trajectory moving past 2025. It was the fans basically saying like, we're going to be in the conference title race like this year. And I'm like, no, you're not. And they haven't been. I mean, they've won 3 Sunbelt games. They're 3-4 in the conference. Like, they're 4 games out of the East race. And they,
Yeah. No, I hear you. Let me find Del Rio Wilson's, or maybe you have it pulled up, his ADOT on this one. Because that was, especially in the early part of the year, why both of us had some pause, even as Marshall was winning games against like MTSU, even against Old Dominion, there was still some worries because it was screen pass, not pushing it further than like 5 yards down the field. What was his ADOT in this one?
6.9.
That's a little short, right?
It's like on the low end of average.
That's on the low, and so
like 7 to 8 is like the average, because it's not counting the completions. It's literally like the guy you threw it to, how far were they down the field, like on average. And like you said, he's had some games where he was hovering around like 4, 5, something like that.
He had some really low stuff.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't have a ton of eyes on this game until late, because there were just other games going on, so I didn't have my eyes here until late, until really Zion Turner took over. So I'm curious, and this is a failure on my part to do the research. Like, does Zion Turner have a check down, or not Zion Turner? I'm sorry, Carlos Del Rio Wilson, CDRW? That doesn't really roll. CD Dub, something like that. Does he have a check down problem, or is this a play calling inefficiency? And I guess, it's too late in the season to find out now, but in retrospect, as we reflect on the season and look at, presumably Del Rio Wilson being the quarterback next year, I think he's only he's a true freshman, maybe redshirt freshman, very young. So he's presumably the starter next year. That's my biggest question for him moving forward.
Yeah. Colton Ferris recovered a fumble with 55 seconds to go to win it for App, basically. That sealed that. Joshawn Barbie played well, 10 carries, 102 yards, and a score for Marshall. Jakari Lewis, somebody we've been calling for. It's almost like Dowell Loggins listens to the podcast, because he was like, we get JJ Cole. I don't know. We get JJ Cole in this one. Jakari Lewis took over the reins from an inefficient Rashad Dubinion. Lewis ran 33 carries for 175 yards and 2 scores. We had kind of pointed out in weeks past, like, he'd been way more efficient with his touches than Dubinion, and I was kind of like, why are you sidelining this guy, especially against JMU last week? I don't know if he was like hurt or banged up or whatever, but JMU, they were like begging for offense in that game, and they were still like, nobody else gets a carry besides Dubinion. And I'm like, what are we doing? Because there was one running back that was good against Georgia Southern 2 weeks prior, and it was Lewis. It wasn't Dubinion. So I don't know. It's almost like he did the Charles Huff thing from last year, where he like settled on a quarterback kind of realized what the running game was, but Loggins waited to game 11 to decide, like, I need to make the right decision. And it's like, I don't know, man. A lot of App State fans were done with you at the end of the JMU game with the sideline crap, putting AJ Swan in and just benching JJ Cole. Like I said, Aikman Chambers texted me, the App State fan. He was like, he's pretty level headed. He was like close to like literally crashing out, like based on what he was watching. I mean, he was like, I can't stand this. Like putting the wrong quarterback in, not giving carries to the running back that's more efficient than the other one, like all of that stuff. He was like, my blood is like boiling, like watching this. And so I'm like, yeah, I don't blame you. Like that was why I came on the last episode and was like, I get it, because I was like, they had a chance to do the right thing and they didn't. Like, so they waited till game 11 to kind of pick the quarterback running back combo that they probably should have had 3-4 games ago.
Well, Dowell, just look, you found the recipe. Obviously, you lucked out there a little with the too late fumbles. But Jakari Lewis is your guy. He's a freshman. Don't let him transfer, buddy. It's in your best interest.
Yeah. I think with the lack of probably overall tape, I would say if they were playing the like long game and we're like, we don't want him to get stolen by another school, A+, because he's probably not going to get scooped up based on these like 2 performances that he's had. The thing that really surprised me about this one, I mean, Marshall obviously turned the ball over 3 times, and you mentioned the 2 fumbles, like that, those were killer. App State won this game with 276 yards of offense. And Marshall had 438 yards of offense. So the key was just like, App was a little bit better on third down. They didn't hurt themselves with the 3 turnovers. They didn't turn the ball over at all. They were very, very conservative. They only let Cole throw the ball 27 times in a game that was like a 2-point final margin. So maybe that's the recipe, but it's taken Loggins way too long to get to this point, I feel like. So
yeah.
All right. Next game here. This one was yours. So Troy beats Georgia State 31-19. I made a joke at the last episode. I was like, there's no way Troy wins this game by 12 points. They won this game by 12 points. Like I said, mentioned at the top, Goose Crowder threw for 361 and 4 touchdowns. You guys in Texas State are just, if Troy played like 12 of y'all, they would have like Tom Brady 2007 passing stats.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So Cameron Brown leaves the game, I think before halftime. He doesn't come out of halftime.
Is this the second week in a row that happened?
I have to look back at his numbers because I don't want to be wrong, but he didn't play against Marshall. He didn't play against Marshall, but got hurt against Coastal. Okay. Is how I remember it going down. But by God, if we didn't put Christian Valaire in relief, I know I've been very critical of TJ Finley, and I would argue rightfully so. Perhaps I was too harsh on the guy because we had to see Christian Valaire. He goes 19 for 38, 303, which is crazy. 20 passes for 19 completions for 303. But you're not letting me look past that 50% completion percentage, one touchdown to an interception. I thought this guy was done. I thought he's a Canadian guy. He's from Montreal. I thought his next stop was going to be as like an assistant in the CFL, maybe a ball boy or something. Maybe play. Like I said, I think he's from Montreal. Maybe he could be a translator for the Alouettes or something. But I guess he's still here, so that's awesome.
I'll tell you this. I would not have said I like Georgia State plus 11.5 if I knew that Christian Valaire would even take 1 rep. If you told me going into that game, you said Christian Valaire's going to play, I would be like, go ahead and give me Troy.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned at the top when we were kind of talking about Old Dominion and how congratulations you beat up on the 3rd worst defense in the country. Troy, Goose Crowder, welcome back. Finally, again, you do it against the second worst defense in the country. The only team below those two is Charlotte by total yardage. I'm pretty sure that those numbers may have changed since like late last night, but Troy, I'm like you. I'm just so done with this Georgia State team. I'm done with us rolling out uncompetitive quarterbacks. Again, I know Cameron Brown is hurt. He wasn't cleared. Del McGee just was very blunt, just was not cleared when asked about why he didn't come back out. Ted Hurst ended up being a game time decision here, does not play. No receptions here. Jordan Simmons, it's like, where did this guy come from? Where has he been all year? And it's great that he's a senior, so that's really cool. Don't get to see any more of him. I don't know. It's just like, it's like you. I'm just kind of checked out because it's pretty obvious that outside of Cameron Brown, like all of the defensive playmakers, Funches Lewis, like there are guys there, but certainly not sticking around. Cameron Brown, if not for these injuries, probably isn't sticking around. So it's just really tough. And so big ups really to Troy, though, because with the Southern Miss result, which we'll talk about, this puts them in the hunt still. They get to play for the conference semifinal. And that's big for Troy because we saw James Madison fall into, I guess it was a trap game for JMU or something was going on. So Troy could have, much worse team than James Madison could have easily fallen for the same thing. And they didn't. So hats off.
What about Javon Robinson here taking over for Hurst as like the number one receiver for State? What did you see?
He's been good all year. It's not like he's been a 4 or 5 catch a game guy. He's had a couple. I think this was his first 100-yard game of the year. I don't think he'd eclipsed that mark. And he's been a part of the offense. He's not like the long-term solution. I don't think he takes over for Ted Hurst next year. Again, anticipating
if he's
that Ted
even
Hurst
still there.
Yeah, again, anticipating that Ted Hurst even plays for Georgia State next year. So Robinson, this wasn't like oh my gosh, where's this guy been? Because he's been a part of the offense and has just been sporadically he'll go 5 for 60 and sporadically he'll go 4 for 18. So yeah.
Couple of Troy receivers I want to shout out right here. DJ Epps had 8 catches, 103 and 2 scores. You had Ethan Connor here catch 2 touchdowns as well. So a very kind of simplified, passing attack. They had some other guys like Trey Taylor get in the mix. You had a Peyton Higgins get in the mix, but really just kind of a concentrated passing attack. And, that's good enough to beat a Georgia State defense that's as bad as anybody in the country is. Let's see here. Goose Crowder had 21 yards rushing. Tay Meadows only had 35 yards. Was that more of a factor of them just opting to throw the ball, or was it like they literally couldn't get the running game going?
They couldn't get it moving. That's
a bad sign.
That against Georgia State, that is a really bad sign, especially because Tay Meadows has been good this year. That was a really shocking. I would say that Georgia State's best talent, not their best defensive ability, but their best defensive talent, probably lies in the front 7 with some of those guys. Funches Lewis, I talked about. Deuce Walker kind of comes down. Sometimes he's more of like a box safety. So I would argue that their best talent exists in the run stopping game as opposed to the pass. Obviously, again, Georgia State, one of the worst defenses off on both sides of the ball. That gives me worry for Troy long term, especially as we look at, what's going to be the semifinal game against Southern Miss. The inability to run the ball because we just saw Southern Miss. You're going to need to control the clock. We saw Braylon Braxton is back, and he went insane. But
not until late, though. Really,
not until late.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to just roll into that game then?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So yeah, like you said, South Alabama jumps on Southern Miss at halftime. By halftime, it's 21-7. Um, this was unlike a lot of South Alabama performances we've seen this year. Davenport was very, very efficient. I actually, to go back, I just wanted to throw a stat at you real quick. I can't remember whose it was. Give me 1 second here. Oh, that's the next game. Sorry. Okay. So again, Davenport is efficient, but not really pushing the ball down the field. I don't know if this is an error or whatnot. His A dot, according to PFF, was 2.8 yards. His yards per attempt was 6.6 in this. So basically, they were just kind of like content to run the football. Kentrell Bullock went crazy in this one, 187, 3 touchdowns.
We've been waiting on that for a long time.
Well, I think the problem has been their defense is typically not good enough to allow them to get a lead and to run the ball and really kind of salt the clock. They're usually playing from behind, which is not a strength of Davenport's. As we've seen, like even in this one, they won huge, or they were up huge and eventually won by 7 points or whatever, but they scored 42, which we haven't seen. I don't think we've seen them hit that number all year. Even against Georgia State, it was like 38. So yeah, it's just like they ran the ball with Keenan Phillips and Kentrell Bullock, those two guys had 4 touchdowns between them. They probably executed Major Applewhite's game plan from what he would ideally want to a T. And then, like you said, Braxton went insane trying to bring them back at the end, but ultimately it was just kind of too little too late. They scored 20. Southern Miss scores 21 in the fourth quarter, but it's not enough. They were down by way too much to make that happen. So,
something that you and I neglected in our preview of this game, and I think it does hold some weight, not a ton, but does hold some weight. South Alabama has never lost to Southern Miss, 6-0 all time. Granted, that's a relatively small sample size, but you're going back, and we're also looking at some really bad Southern Miss teams historically, and not great South Alabama teams, but you have Carter Bradley, a handful of receivers that have done things in the NFL, Jalen Tolbert being one of them. So, a bit of a discrepancy there, but 6-0 all time, and Southern Miss just wasn't up to the pressure. I think this is a major, major letdown, and really, really. After this performance, right? We know they're going to get their socks blown off against James Madison. That's pretty evident.
Whoever makes it between him and Troy are going to get. Even if Alonza Barnett has a bad performance, those two. We already know it's a really bad style matchup because Southern Miss and Troy cannot run the football even against bad defenses. So you've basically already taken half of the offense off the field before the first snap is taken. Tay Meadows has been good, but he's inefficient with he's kind of a volume guy more than efficiency.
Yeah.
And then on we've talked about South Alabama or Southern Miss rather, their inability to find a running back in this kind of potpourri of Matt Jones and Pittman and all these other guys. It's like none of these guys make a difference really. So whoever goes between Troy and Southern Miss is going to be putting all of the pressure, all the chips in the middle on their quarterback and being like, we're going to live and die with Goose Crowder or Braylon Braxton. And if we get our socks blown off like you and I anticipate they will, then so be it. I don't even know that it really matters. Like, I don't think the way that I've seen these two defenses play recently, Troy and Southern Miss, I think JMU can just run the ball with Wayne Knight and be fine. Like I truly don't think like the Old Dominion Troy game gave me a lot of pause about what Troy actually is, and I know that was a really bad game for them, but that was ugly. And Southern Miss the last 2 weeks with this Texas State loss and allowing 42 to South Alabama is a real like holy crap, wake up call for them.
Yeah, and that Texas State loss, obviously a better Texas State offense, but scored 41 against the Golden Eagles in that one as well. Some glaring issues. This is a really bad loss, and I think it really is going to sour. What I've seen is that this has really soured a lot of Southern Miss fans on Charles Huff on what has been otherwise a really, really good first season. And, you know, granted, he's got the best quarterback in the conference in Braylon Braxton, but I think this result really this is the type of result that exposes coaches for what they are, teams for what they're lacking. Much like the Arkansas State that we talked about at the top. Like that loss is going to be the loss of Butch Jones's tenure if he gets fired in the offseason, which without real reason feels more likely than not. Southern Miss was no new inefficiencies were discovered here because we knew already that they lacked a real superstar in the run game. Like Jeffrey Pittman's been good, but not great. You've got some receivers like Carl Chester, Elijah Metcalf, but like they're not demanding so much attention. They're not creating the inverse effect of Old Dominion where Colton Joseph is demanding so much attention from all 11 guys on the defense that it frees up your other offensive weapons. You're not getting that effect out of a really good role of like Chester Metcalf. Kyron Heath is in there. There's a handful of really good guys. And then I found Southern Miss just kind of unable to get after the quarterback against a poor quarterback, a relatively poor offense in general in South Alabama. And it's like that's going to bite. Not that it matters. That's going to bite you against James Madison.
Yeah. Yeah, I think both of these teams, Troy and Southern Miss, I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse. Whoever goes is basically going to be the sacrificial lamb out of the West. Like it's going to be ugly. I hope that both of those quarterbacks, Braxton and Crowder, both enjoyed like their passing performances. They're not going to touch that, or if they do against JMU, it's going to be in total garbage time. Yeah, I hate to say this because we're like a Sunbelt podcast. I truly don't care who wins that game next Saturday. Like I don't think it really moves the needle other than just bragging rights. Like if Southern Miss comes in, I know like what you said, this is sour. The last 2 weeks have soured them on Huff a little bit. I think those people need to take a step back and look at where they started and where they are now, because this is year one. And if he's, Braxton's not going to be there forever. I understand that. But if you're 8-4 or 8-5 or whatever in year one, that's something to build off of. Whereas, would you rather go back to Will Hall? I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
I'm like, take a honest stock. Yes, this Saturday you can play for the West Division. When's the last time you could say that? You have one of the two best quarterbacks in the conference, along with Colton Joseph. If you had jumped in a time machine to the beginning of the 2024 season and told a Southern Miss fan after they were getting ready to go into that season with Will Hall once again as like a dead man walking, if you told them, hey, at the end of 2025, you're going to have one of the two best quarterbacks on your team in the conference, and you guys are going to be playing for a Sunbelt title game berth by the last week of the season, I think they would take that all day. So I think it's a little bit like, take a step back and look at the bigger picture here about where you started and where you are now. Like you can be disappointed with these two performances for sure. Don't let it spoil the entire season for you by being like, we should have won those two games. Ultimately, if you beat Troy this weekend, those two games don't matter. And you probably weren't going to beat James Madison anyway. So you probably were started and ended from 3 weeks ago at the same end destination you were going to end up at, regardless of how Texas State and South Alabama played out. So just think about it before like you get like super emotional and are like, this is unacceptable, blah, blah, blah. No, it's fine. You were always going to be 8-4, 7-5 starting, a couple weeks back. And you were always going to lose to JMU, as was anybody else in the West. So just take stock of what you have. It's a wonderful life. It be like, we could have went a very different direction, and now we're here. So, and if you're Troy, it's like, this is a huge step up from last year when you won 4 games, and Crowder didn't look playable in the games that he played early, and then he gets hurt. Gilcrease was terrible last year. You've at least seen games this year where he's been playable. So there is a little bit of, it's looking up. However, I'm a little more skeptical on Troy moving forward than I am what Huff is doing in Hattiesburg. I think he keeps pitching guys on like, I've had the best quarterback. We won the Sun Belt title under me last year. Like, you can build off that. Parker, this is still like, to me, these wins that they've had are a lot of smoke and mirrors, I think. Like, yeah, we ran down all the teams they beat, and it's not great.
It's tough because I agree. I think for Gerard Parker's kind of long-term job security or job trajectory, it's important that he wins this to get that conference title game like accolade, even if they get their socks blown off. I think it's really important because we've talked all year about how some wins are a little fraudulent this year. But also, I don't know if that's necessarily a knock, because on a team-by-team level, on a conference level, it's a really down year. This is the worst year of the Sun Belt since I've been around the conference, and this is year 4 or 5 for me. This is like, from a broad perspective, the most down I've ever seen this collection of 14 teams. So like, is it fraudulent if that's, because it's not like they're, I don't know. It's tough for me to call them fraudulent when it's not like Troy has been picking on the worst teams of the conference. They're just picking on the teams in the conference.
No, they've been picking on some of the worst teams in the conference. We talked about it on a previous episode. It's like, they dodged a lot of the good teams to decent teams in the East with who they played. Okay, hold on. Let me pull this up. So let me read this off. These are the teams they played in the East this year. You ready? Old Dominion, who they lost to by 33 points, 33-0. Georgia State. That's your East schedule. So you got one legit contender and the worst team in the conference. Your West wins are over South Alabama, Texas State, UL Monroe, Louisiana, and again, Georgia State is your last conference win to date. I think what's going to happen is this. I may have a totally different take by next summer when we're doing the previews. I think this is the team we're going to look at that we did the Arkansas State thing for this past season, where we went unsustainable. You can't sustain this. Like, this is a Georgia Southern from last year. This is an Arkansas State from last year, where it's like, that team won 8 games. Were they really that good? No. And all it took was a little bit of a harder, like, reshuffle of the schedule. Maybe a couple guys leave that you weren't anticipating. Maybe you have an injury or two. And then it's like, boom, I'm not saying this is going to happen, because there's a lot that needs to happen between now and next season. But that's the kind of things it takes for you to be 5-6 midway through 2020, at the end of 2026, like, hoping that you win your 12th game to go to a bowl. Yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
I think you're right. I'm being wishy-washy on it, but I think you're ultimately right. I like the comparison to the Arkansas State and Georgia Southern of last year, where, just unsustainable is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, like, I truly, and this is like not a knock on Troy, because you play the schedule that's in front of you. However, it's like, you didn't play JMU, you didn't play Marshall, who's been frisky against some other teams. It's like, you play Southern Miss this Saturday. We don't know what that looks like yet, but that's going to be the second hardest team that you play this season. I mean, not including, like, I guess Clemson. I don't know how we feel about Clemson, but they've not had a banner season. So it's like, okay, great. Like, you guys had an easy schedule. Like, a lot of teams can take advantage of that. And again, when you reshuffle the deck next year, it's like, Okay. But then what happens if there's a team in the West? What happens if Louisiana builds back up and they're like a legit contender? Or I don't know. I mean, it's just like they don't really have to worry about the East because again, they can just play 2 East games and be done with that
Yeah.
that side of the bracket. All right. So next game here, we can breeze through this one because South Carolina absolutely rolled Coastal 51-7. They made Lenora Sellers look like Lamar Jackson in his prime at Louisville. Sellers had 274 and 2 touchdowns and ran for 82 yards and 2 scores. This is the stat I was going to read to you when I said never mind.
Mm-hmm.
Tad Hudson, I want to make sure I get this right. Yards per attempt was 4.8. His average depth of target was 3 yards. I don't think I've ever seen a number around 3.
That's tight, man. Best part about this game, I think there were a lot of quarterbacks with fun names. Lenora Sellers, Cutter Woods, and Air Noland. That was cool. We were robbed of a fun matchup between Sellers and Samari Collier. Collier out with injury. They say maybe he'll be back for the bowl game. I wouldn't push it because he's the closest you have in that building right now to a real quarterback that might be able to play next year. I don't know what eligibility looks like. But
I read that I don't think he has another year. I think this is it. This is it. I mean, and I from what I heard, it's like if he doesn't push for and I don't know how he would get this with like 3 games left in the season. They were like, basically, if he doesn't get an injury waiver, like his career's over.
That sucks because it was fun while it lasted.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a guy in 4 years. Hey, remember Samari Collier? Remember the 4 games we got out of Samari Collier?
Yeah.
Those were kind of electric. Not electric, but kind of electric.
Like a bottle rocket that was set off on the 4th of July. It went up, you were like, ooh, and then it popped, and you were just like, all right, back to Tad Hudson, I guess.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I mean, for Coastal, there's not a lot to take away from this game that would be positive. Their 2 running backs, Javin Simpkins and Javon Edwards, combined for 33 rushing yards in this game. It was 37-0 at half. You mentioned Air Noland. That's a guy I'm surprised. He's at South Carolina now? That's shocking.
Yes, he is a redshirt freshman. He was at Ohio State last year, wasn't he?
Oh, he was a big-time recruit, which is why I'm shocked that
he's
at South
he
Carolina.
Was. I remember. So I guess it would have been 2 years ago. He was at Hughes. They call it Hughes now, but Langston Hughes. In like South Atlanta. Yeah, that kid was crazy. I don't know. He's a redshirt freshman. Maybe he'll end up somewhere next year. I hope so. Because that kid could play.
I'm just shocked that they got like a 5-star to come over from Ohio State. And I know he probably looked at the Julian Sayin situation and was like, oh, I'm never going to play here because he's the same age as I am. But listen, that's kind of what happened to Joe Burrow. I'm not saying he's going to be Joe Burrow, obviously, but that's exactly what happened, which was like, they were like, well, let's opt for this other guy. And then Joe Burrow transfers and, you saw what became of that. I don't think Air Noland's going to be that, but I'm just shocked. It's like Justin Fields at Georgia or whatever. Just getting a big time recruit and then being like, all right, you can go, or you can stay and hold a clipboard for 4 years. It's up to you. All right. Last game of the night, Texas State beats UL Monroe. This one was predictable, although it was weird. The final score is 31-14. Texas State scores 3 first half points. It's 3-0 going into the break. And I was like, I don't really have any fear that UL Monroe is going to win this game, even though it's 3-0. And Brad Jackson accounts for 4 second half touchdowns. He threw for 201 and threw 2 scores, and then ran for 88 yards and 2 scores. UL Monroe did their thing. They cap out at 14 points as they do every week. And mercifully, next week, your season's over and you don't have to watch Aiden Armenta for another 12 months. So presumably.
Yeah, this exacerbates the idea that no matter how small a lead, it is safe against ULM. Talk about an electric first quarter. I hope you didn't sit down to watch this one. You get 6 punts to start the game and then a field goal to really round it all out going into the second. So that was it got exciting in the second half. We've put up points finally. You get the 2 ULM touchdowns. As you said, Brad Jackson starts to have a game. Texas State, hope you win next week. You don't want your last year in the Sun Belt to be a non-bowl season. And they finally got another conference win. We need another. This was big for them.
Who do they get in the finale? Do you know?
They get South Alabama. Hey, you can end the year with 3 conference wins in a row. Guys, congratulations. And sneak into the Ventures Bowl.
See you later. Goodbye. Yeah, Aiden Armenta did his. I mean, he was efficient, but again, it's like threw for 172 scoreless yards. Average depth of target was 5.6, so he's not even throwing the ball down the field. I don't know. It's like Braylon McReynolds was. This is shocking to me. So Braylon McReynolds, I have it sorted on PFF by running backs that had more than, I think, 5 carries was the threshold. Braylon McReynolds had, according to them, 11 attempts for 18 yards, and he was the 12th highest graded running back that had at least 5 carries on Saturday. And he had 18 yards.
That's bad.
This is why people are like, I don't know about PFF grades, man.
I guess if he did his job on those 11 carries, that's what they count. How many folks are behind him, and who's behind him? Is there a list, or is it just one or two guys?
Both the Louisiana running backs were behind him. Wayne Knight was behind him, which shocks me because I thought Wayne Knight was like way better, especially with the game-winning touchdown. I'm trying to see. Zach Palmer Smith was behind Braylon McReynolds, even though Zach Palmer Smith had 15 carries for 80 yards and a score at UL Monroe. Brad Jackson was behind him. Like, guys that I would be like, no, this is way better than an 18-yard performance. I'm sorry.
That's bizarre. Okay, one of those oddities, I guess.
It's something. But yeah, I mean, everything you said, ULM mercifully, like, their season's gonna be over. Win, loss, or draw next Saturday. Texas State is now going to play a South Alabama school who like showed some signs of life on last Saturday. I don't know if they can carry that over because they've just been peaks and valleys against some of the worst defenses in the conference. And then they show up against a pretty good one in Southern Miss and score 42. So I maybe just take the over just to be safe. Like, I don't know what that game's going to hold because frankly, I don't think it really matters, but whatever. Yeah, good win for Texas State. UL Monroe has gotten drubbed by everybody this year. So, whatever.
Yeah, this sets up a relatively unimpactful final weekend, save for one game. We got a lot of bowl eligibility on the line for a lot of those middle of the road, worse than 500, like on field, worse than 500 teams. But it's all eyes on Troy at Southern Miss, 3:30 ESPN Plus. See, we've got JMU Coastal on ESPNU. Can we like switch the teams for that or something? Do we really? I've got to watch Coastal on national television to close this out.
Sorry to everybody on that watches that cuts on ESPNU on accident on Saturday and is like, I'm watching Tad Hudson's reps. Yikes.
Oh, goodness.
But yeah, so that'll do it for the show. Email us warmweatherfans@gmail.com. You can catch us on X or TikTok or wherever else at warmweatherfans. You can find me on Twitter at WatchTheStone. Zeke, where they can find you on socials.
At Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo.
All right. And we will be back on Thursday to talk over the last week of the Sunbelt regular season. This has been Warm Weather Fans.